What if your income isn't something you earn, but something you allow? What if the number in your bank account is not a reflection of your potential, your effort, or your value, but a mirror quietly echoing who you believe you are beneath all appearances? There's a strange pain that comes from trying everything, from working harder, studying more, meditating, visualizing, scripting, praying, and still finding yourself face to face with the same limit, a financial glass ceiling that never breaks, only reflects. You see others rise. You read all the words that promise change, but deep inside something still says, why not me? What am I not seeing? And that question, though it hurts, is sacred, because in that ache, a truth is waking up. Neville Goddard said, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Not gradually, not conditionally, but automatically. Because the world isn't reacting to what you do, it's reflecting what you are. And income is just one of the ways it whispers back to you what you've accepted as true. This isn't about blame. This isn't about shame. This is about permission. The permission to imagine again. Not from desperation, but from the quiet knowing that the identity that earns is the identity that already is. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches that most people try to create new results while living inside the same neurochemical identity that once feared those results. You try to generate abundance while chemically addicted to the emotional state of lack. And this is not your fault. It's biology on autopilot. Your body isn't resisting money. It's just used to memorizing the past. Because here's the deeper truth. Self-doubt isn't just a thought. It's a physiological state. It lives in the rhythm of your breath when you open a bill. It pulses through your chest when someone talks about wealth. It lives in the split-second decision to shrink, to wait, to postpone. It's the mind saying, maybe later, maybe when I'm more ready, maybe when I finally feel worthy. But worthiness is not a reward for effort. It's an assumption you make in silence. And assumption is not imagination, it is identity. You don't become abundant. You remember that you already are. That the source that gives life to stars also moves through your breath and is not confused about your value. The contradiction is subtle, but powerful. You desire expansion, but expect restriction. You want freedom, but anticipate limits. You affirm prosperity, but brace for loss. And so the signal gets scrambled. The universe does not reject your intention. It simply mirrors your dominant frequency. And when the frequency of desire and the frequency of expectation don't match, the field reflects the stronger one. Here's the paradigm shift. Wealth is not achieved. It is assumed. And self-doubt is not humility. It is the nervous system's refusal to believe that the assumption is safe. But that can change. It is changing. Right now. With this awareness, the rewiring begins. Feel this. Your income is not an amount. It's a broadcast. A silent radio signal sent by your self-perception. It doesn't respond to how much you try. It responds to what you embody. Not what you say, but what you feel real in the private chambers of your being. Today, we're not chasing anything. We're remembering, realigning, reclaiming. The static of doubt is dissolving, and the signal of your new identity is becoming clear. There's a reason your financial reality feels so personal, because it is. Not because it defines you, but because it reflects you. Not your effort, not your hours, but your self-perception, quietly echoed back through numbers, timing, and opportunities. Most people believe money measures worth, that the more you have, the more valid you are, that wealth validates your voice, your talent, your right to take up space. But what if that's not true? What if your financial life doesn't measure who you are, but reveals what you've agreed to believe? Neville Goddard taught that the world is not a separate place reacting to you. It is your inner self, pushed outward, mirrored back faithfully. That includes money. Your finances are not a test. They are a printout of your inner story. And if the numbers haven't changed, the story hasn't either. There's a concept in psychology called the Galatea effect. It says that your performance, your choices, your behavior, your results, is governed not by outside motivation, but by your own image of who you believe you are. You live up or down to the identity you secretly carry. And here is the twist. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to goals. It responds to assumptions. If you keep saying, I need more money, you are reinforcing the state of not having. But when you say, I am the consciousness that creates it, You move out of lack and into authorship. Money is not separate from consciousness. It is one of its many shapes, one of its many expressions. When you no longer chase it as something external, you begin to see it as a shadow of your state. And when you raise your state, not through force but through assumption, you raise the echo, you alter the mirror. So, feel this with me. Imagine your bank account not as the source of your security, but as its reflection. Not as the place where your power begins, but where it echoes. Your belief is the voice. Your income is the reply. And if the voice changes, the echo must. There's a quiet contradiction that keeps so many from receiving. You want the wealth. You see it. You dream of it. You even affirm it. But somewhere underneath, you still think like someone who's waiting for it, still expecting struggle, still preparing for disappointment, still living as if wealth is something you have to prove you deserve. Neville once said, "You can't be rich and continue to think of yourself as poor." It sounds simple, but it cuts deep, because many still carry the emotional memory of lack, even when imagining abundance. It's like trying to speak a new language while thinking in the old one. You say the words, but the vibration doesn't match. The brain doesn't resist money. It resists identity change. Neuroscience calls it predictive coding. Your nervous system seeks what feels familiar, not what feels better. And if scarcity, hustle, or unworthiness have become your emotional default, your body will choose that familiar discomfort over the unknown peace of having. It's not logic, it's survival. And this is where transformation begins, not by demanding more, but by rehearsing a new state, a state that feels financially safe even before evidence appears, a state that knows ease before the world says it's allowed. This isn't pretending, it's preparing, not hoping, but harmonizing. Because here's the paradox. If you wait to feel rich until the money comes, you delay the very frequency that attracts it. But when you feel now what most only allow themselves to feel after success, you collapse time. You close the gap, not the gap between you and money, but the gap between your current identity and your assumed one. You are not a poor person trying to become wealthy. You are a wealthy consciousness, remembering its truth. The same power that paints sunsets and gives life to oceans is not confused about your worth. The only confusion lives in the thoughts that say, "Not yet. Maybe later, when I've earned it." But abundance is not earned. It is expressed, and expression comes from identity. Imagine this with me. Your identity is an operating system, and you're trying to install a new program, financial freedom, while the old one is still running. Of course it crashes. Of course it loops. Not because the goal is wrong, but because the system hasn't been upgraded. Today, something begins to shift, not by pushing, not by proving, but by remembering. Remembering what it feels like to already be what you once believed you had to chase. Poverty doesn't begin in your bank account. It begins in your thinking, in the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening, in the way you interpret silence, in the way you flinch at opportunities because something inside still whispers, "Not for you." Before it's financial, scarcity is mental. It's not the absence of money, it's the absence of permission to feel worthy of more. It's the belief that security is something you chase instead of something you remember, that you have to earn what life is already offering, if only you could accept it. Neville Goddard said, "You will never attract what you are not conscious of being. And what you are conscious of being is not what you say out loud, it's what you feel real in the quiet. It's what you expect without even realizing you expect it. That silent baseline of assumption, that's the real economy." Science confirms what mystics have known all along. Studies show that financial stress narrows your perception. It literally shrinks your cognitive capacity. You see less, not because you're blind, but because your mind is consumed with survival. Options disappear, not because they aren't there, but because your nervous system is tuned to lack. But here's the shift. You are not your old thoughts. You are not your mental budget of limitations, and you can interrupt the cycle. Not by fixing everything at once, but by noticing the script and rewriting it in real time. When the familiar worry arrives, about bills, about timing, about not being enough, you don't have to follow it. You can whisper back, "That was the old thought. That was the old budget. I spend differently now." Because money is not the only currency. Attention is, focus is, identity is, And when you change what you invest those in, everything else rearranges. So pause with me for a moment. Imagine a person standing in paradise, palm trees, crystal water, the scent of peace in the air, but inside they still feel broke, still hoarding, still waiting for permission to feel secure. This person could be a millionaire, but if the identity hasn't changed, they'll walk through heaven with the eyes of someone still trapped in yesterday. That's the power of assumption. Not to pretend, but to upgrade the lens through which you live. You're not just reprogramming your thoughts, you're creating a new economic atmosphere internally, and wealth flows where identity opens space. Some doubts are loud, others wear disguises. They speak in rational tones. They sound like caution, like logic, like responsibility. But underneath, they carry the same vibration. Fear dressed up as intelligence. Fear pretending to be wise. You begin to feel a pull, an idea, an opportunity, a new direction. Your heart opens slightly, but then the voice arrives. What if it doesn't work? What if you look foolish? What if you lose everything? And slowly, without knowing it, your body returns to the familiar state of waiting, of not enough, of postponement. Neville Goddard said, "Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality, not to fantasy, but to the reality that exists first inside. The version of you that already has, already is, already knows." And doubt, when it appears, is nothing more than a signal that you've momentarily tuned away from that inner frequency. Modern neuroscience gives us the rest of the picture. When fear takes over, it activates the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. And when that system is on, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of vision, imagination, and higher logic, dims. You literally stop seeing possibility, not because it's gone, but because your inner lens has fogged. But the good news is, awareness rewires the loop, not by arguing with doubt, but by pausing, just long enough to breathe, to return, to remember the felt state of already having. In that micro moment, you shift from reaction to creation, from survival to assumption. This isn't about pretending you have no fear. It's about not obeying it, not kneeling to it, not letting it dress up as wisdom and block the very path your soul has already chosen. Picture this. There's a scientist in a lab coat, clipboard in hand, explaining in perfect detail why your dream is impossible. The numbers don't add up. The probabilities are low. The risks are high. And you almost believe it, until you look closer and realize it's not a scientist, it's fear. It's the same voice that showed up when you tried something new years ago, the same voice that called itself realistic, but never once led you to freedom. That voice will always speak, but now it doesn't decide, because you are remembering something stronger, something quieter, something sacred. The path is not built with certainty. It is built with resonance. And when your body begins to feel safe in the unknown, wealth no longer feels like a risk. It feels like the most natural outcome of who you've become. We've been trained to believe that more effort means more results, that hustle creates success, that movement equals progress. But the laws that shape reality don't respond to effort alone. They respond to energy, to alignment, to the emotional tone that silently colors every thought, every action, every desire. Neville said, "Feeling is the secret." And it wasn't poetic, it was precise. Because feeling is not decoration, it is direction. Emotion is not a byproduct of reality, it is the generator of it. And until the feeling matches the desire, the reality cannot fully land. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains that every emotional state emits a measurable electromagnetic field. You're not just thinking, you're broadcasting, you're not just wanting, you're tuning. And abundance and lack can speak completely different frequencies. Wanting is one signal, receiving is another. So many live in contradiction, affirming wealth while feeling unworthy, visualizing success while carrying anxiety, doing more and more, but from a state of not having. And so the field receives a scrambled message, not because the universe is confused, but because the signal is inconsistent. But this is not about fake positivity. This is about emotional truth. The kind of truth that doesn't need to scream, the kind that whispers, "It's already mine." The kind that feels calm in the face of uncertainty, not because it denies reality, but because it trusts resonance over appearance. There's a simple shift that changes everything. A few minutes each day, of emotional calibration, not wishing, not hoping, but feeling, deliberately, the tone of already having. You don't need dramatic intensity. You need clarity, a clean, steady signal that says, this is who I am now. Because here's what most don't realize. The station of wealth is not above you. It's not far away. It's not even hidden. It's simply clearer than the noise you've been taught to believe. It plays in the background, softly, steadily, waiting for you to quiet the static of fear and tune in. So pause, listen, not to the words in your mind, but to the emotional current beneath them. What are you actually feeling when you think about money? Do you feel peace or pressure? Do you feel arrival or delay? The world is not punishing you. It is mirroring your signal, not to shame you, but to wake you, to show you, moment by moment, exactly what tone you've been living in, so you can change it. Because once the feeling changes, the future does too. Not later, but now. There's a limit you didn't choose, but you've been loyal to it. A number, a threshold, a ceiling that lives not in your circumstances, but in your subconscious. It was never spoken out loud, but you felt it every time you tried to expand beyond what felt reasonable, safe, or familiar. This invisible ceiling was built long before you asked for more. It was built through observations, family patterns, cultural codes, silent agreements about what is enough and who is allowed to have more. You didn't create this ceiling, but you've been living under it. Neville revealed it clearly. Man's faith in limitation is the only barrier. Not limitation itself, but the loyalty to it. The internal agreement to keep things the way they've always been, because change, even beautiful change, feels like danger to a mind trained by lack. Your nervous system was designed for homeostasis, to keep you safe by keeping you the same. It doesn't measure progress by joy, it measures it by familiarity. So when you start to rise financially, spiritually, emotionally, the alarm goes off, not because something's wrong, but because it feels new. This is why some people sabotage at the edge of breakthrough. They receive more and suddenly get sick, pick a fight, make a mistake, or lose what arrived. Not because they don't deserve it, but because they don't recognize themselves at that level. It's unfamiliar. It's uninhabited. It feels like someone else's life. But here's the sacred invitation, to recognize the ceiling not as a punishment but as a mirror. It's showing you where your inner story ends, and that's where the rewrite begins. Sit with this. What's the highest amount of money you've ever received at once and felt truly at peace with? What number still feels too big, too distant, too not me? That number is not a barrier. It's a doorway, a vibrational edge where the old self lets go and the true self begins. This isn't about greed. It's about sovereignty, about releasing inherited scarcity and remembering your divine authorship. You don't expand because you need more. You expand because your identity is outgrowing the old container. And here's the image, a bird on a branch. It wants to fly. It feels the wind. But part of it still grips the old story. The story that says, if I let go, I'll fall. But the truth is, the moment you release the branch, you meet your wings. Your ceiling was never real. It was just a resting place. And now you're ready to rise. There's a cost to needing proof, a subtle poverty that arises when your sense of value depends on how others see you, measure you, or praise you. It's not just insecurity, it's energetic bankruptcy. Because when you need the outside world to validate your abundance, you lose the ability to feel it before it shows up. Comparison is not just a distraction, it's a frequency shift. One moment, you're aligned with your truth, your timeline, your rhythm. Then you see someone else's success, and something in you tightens. Am I late? Am I behind? What am I doing wrong? You weren't in lack until the mirror of someone else's life distorted your own reflection. Neville's teaching echoes gently here. Stop looking outside for your signs, because signs are not confirmations of reality. They are reflections of consciousness. And the moment you begin needing the world to reflect your worth, you give away the very power that creates it. Psychology has caught up to this ancient wisdom. Studies show that the more you compare yourself to others, the lower your dopamine satisfaction becomes. You train your brain to never feel complete, to always be waiting for external evidence, applause, permission. But real wealth doesn't shout, it doesn't perform, it doesn't beg to be seen. It settles, quietly, in the body, in the breath. in the sacred confidence of someone who knows, I am not late, I am not less, I am not defined by anyone's timeline but my own. There is a quiet ritual that rewires the energy of comparison. When something beautiful happens, don't rush to share it. Let it settle first. Let it become real inside you before it becomes visible to others. Celebrate in silence, not because you're hiding, but because you're training your nervous system to find joy within, not through reaction. Picture a tree. It doesn't glance sideways to see if the others are growing faster. It doesn't shrink because another is taller. It simply rises, rooted, certain, because its rhythm is not dictated by the forest, it's dictated by its own inner sun. You are not here to prove. You are here to remember. And when validation is no longer your currency, abundance becomes inevitable. Because you've stopped begging for what you already are. You say you want more freedom, more peace, more abundance. And you mean it. But underneath something trembles, not because the desire isn't real, but because the expectation is still wired to fear. There's a split between what you affirm and what you anticipate. A quiet contradiction that slows the signal. This is the conflicted command, the emotional dissonance between desire and belief. You speak prosperity, but brace for loss. You visualize success, but feel undeserving. You reach for change, while unconsciously preparing for disappointment. Neville spoke to this beautifully. Assume the tone of the fulfilled desire. Not the words, not the idea, but the tone. Because it's not the intention that shapes your life. It's the inner mood you carry while intending. Modern neuroscience reveals how this conflict plays out. When you hold two opposing beliefs, one conscious, one subconscious, the body experiences stress. Cortisol rises, the nervous system becomes hyper-vigilant, and suddenly, even good things feel dangerous. You start to associate abundance with instability, attention, judgment, or betrayal. Not because it's true, but because the body is still carrying old emotional blueprints. But there's a way through, and it doesn't come through force. It comes through rehearsal, through teaching the body that receiving is safe, that you don't need to explode with excitement when money comes. You can meet it with calm, with steadiness, with the quiet recognition that says, of course. Because when you celebrate too loudly, you're still surprised. And when you're still surprised, it means some part of you didn't fully believe it was possible. But peace is the signature of possession, not arrogance, not indifference, just a deep inner alignment that says, this is who I am now. I'm not visiting abundance, I live here. The universe is not confused, it's just responding to your signal. And when that signal is mixed, when you ask with one part of your being but resist with another, the delivery gets lost in translation. Like sending two letters with opposite instructions. One says, come in. The other says, don't. But you can unify that message. You can harmonize it, not by faking it, but by choosing coherence, by giving yourself full permission to want what you want and expect it without apology. Because the moment your desire and your expectation speak in one voice, the world begins to listen and respond. There's a form of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing from the wrong place, from striving while still doubting, from pushing while still fearing, from giving everything you have without yet believing that what you desire is already yours. We've been conditioned to worship effort, to measure our worth by our busyness, to equate fatigue with success. But manifestation does not answer to struggle. It answers to state, to inner resonance, to the feeling of already having, even when nothing outside has changed. Neville Goddard corrected this misconception with clarity. Creation is finished, meaning your role is not to force reality into shape, but to align with the version of yourself who already lives in the end. The outer work is not the path, it's the echo, the expression of an inner reality already chosen, already assumed. Psychology explains this as the effort heuristic, the belief that something is more valuable just because it required more effort. But sometimes, effort is just resistance in disguise, a way to delay worthiness, a way to say, maybe if I work hard enough, I'll finally deserve it. But worth is not something you earn, it's something you remember. This is where the shift happens. When you stop acting from compensation and begin moving from conviction, when your actions are no longer trying to get something, but are flowing from the identity that already has it. It's not about doing less for the sake of laziness. It's about sacred efficiency, inspired movement, the kind of effort that feels clean, clear, and purposeful, not heavy, desperate, or chaotic. Imagine someone rowing upstream with all their strength, sweating, straining, fighting the current, and yet the river, the deeper intelligence, is flowing in the opposite direction, toward peace, toward reception, toward the version of you that knows this isn't about struggle. It's about surrender, not to passivity, but to precision. You don't manifest more by adding more force. You manifest more by removing the friction between your state and your desire. You manifest when your being speaks louder than your actions, when your stillness contains more conviction than all your noise. The illusion is that working harder will fix it. But the truth is, when you align your state, life becomes cooperative. Reality begins to move with you, not because you've earned it, but because you've matched it. And that's when effort becomes effortless, movement becomes momentum, and the current, finally, takes you home. Real transformation doesn't come from knowing more, it comes from becoming more. And becoming more is not about accumulation, it's about integration, about training the body and brain to believe in what the soul already knows. You are already it, you are already there. Neville Goddard taught the spiritual architecture of this truth. Persist in the assumption until it hardens into fact. Not because repetition makes it true in the world, but because repetition makes it familiar in you. And once something feels natural internally, the external must follow. This isn't just mystical poetry, it's neurobiology. Dr. Joe Dispenza reveals that the brain rewires through repetition, image, emotion, and meaning. Not just affirmations without feeling, not just visualizations without presence, but emotional rehearsal, the conscious decision to feel what you want, as if it has already happened. When you feel it, you imprint it, and the brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined state and a real one. The circuits begin to change, the chemistry shifts, the identity evolves, not as a fantasy, but as a neurological truth. This is why assumption is not mental, it's cellular. It has to sink into the breath, into the spine, into the rhythm of how you walk into a room. It's not about saying, I am rich. It's about being someone who has already lived that truth so many times, within that the outside world simply aligns, effortlessly. So give yourself this space, not to wish, not to escape, but to rehearse. For 5 minutes each day, not as a task, but as a sacred return, step into your future memory, not the one you hope for, but the one you've already accepted. See it, feel it, breathe inside it, let it become normal, known, yours. And when doubt tries to whisper, you're pretending, smile softly, because now you know. Repetition is not pretending, it's preparation. It's the bridge between the self you've carried and the one you are now embodying. Think of it like walking a new path in a forest. At first, the way is rough, unfamiliar, hard to follow, but the more you walk it, the more you feel it, the more real it becomes. Until one day, it's not a new path anymore. It's your path, the only one you know how to take. This is how you reprogram reality, not by force, but by familiarity, not by waiting for proof, but by practicing the truth. Because the world doesn't respond to who you wish to be, it responds to who you believe you already are. Neville Goddard's words still echo, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Because reality does not respond to hope, it mirrors conviction, not momentary excitement, but sustained inner alignment, the kind that feels natural, safe, unshakable. Greg Braden teaches that when thought, emotion, and belief move in coherence, physical reality cannot remain the same. This isn't mysticism, it's magnetic law. Your life is not happening to you, it's being generated through you. And that includes your income, your opportunities, your timing. They are not delayed because you're not worthy. They're aligned with the frequency you've made familiar. This is why the most powerful shift is not effort, but assumption, not waiting, but becoming. Self-doubt doesn't need to be fought. It dissolves when certainty becomes your new baseline. When your nervous system no longer braces for loss, but rests in the quiet, knowing that abundance is already yours. There is nothing to chase, only something to remember. Each time you notice the old pattern, pause. Don't explain, don't fix. Just return to the truth. I am the one who creates. I am the one who already is. You're not reprogramming reality to fit your desire. You're training yourself to feel at home in the version of you who no longer begs for what already belongs to them. The world doesn't respond to who you're trying to be. It responds to who you believe you are, consistently, silently, and without needing proof. And that belief, once stabilized, becomes creative law. The sun doesn't try to shine. It doesn't ask if it's enough. It radiates because it knows what it is. And now so do you.